In this and the next lecture, we will implement lazy loading through a virtual proxy pattern. We're going to lazily load the order information for a customer. To do that, first we need to define an interface called customer with the customer information or the methods that are required to fetch the customer information and the order information. Then we'll implement a customer implementation that will only fetch the customer details, not the customer orders, but the customer ID to start with. Then the customer proxy impl class will be implemented. This is the proxy class for the customer impl. It will implement the same customer interface, and this guy is responsible for loading the order details when required. So this guy here, the customer proxy impl, is the proxy class for the customer implementation. So through this we'll accomplish lazy loading, that is loading the order information only when it is accessed for the first time. Go to STS, core patterns, right click on the source folder, new interface. We're going to define the customer interface, and the package is com.bharat.patterns.proxy. Finish. We'll define a couple of methods that are required on this interface. The first method is int get ID of the customer, and the second method returns a list of orders. The orders class doesn't exist yet. We'll create it. This is get orders. So those two are good enough for now. Hit Control 1, import list from Java orders, Control 1 on order, create a class called order that will go into the same package. Finish. Go back to the customer, save it. Now let's implement the order class before we go ahead with the customer. The order will have a int ID. We'll make all of them private, string product name, and then int quantity. Make all of them private. Select them all, go to source, generate getters and setters, select all after the quantity, that is where I want them. Do a Control Shift F to format. Right click on the package, create the customer implementation. Customer impl. This is the class for which we'll be creating a proxy later on. This class will have the two fields on it, int, let's make it private right away, private int ID and private list of orders. List of orders, call it orders. Import the list from Java util. Select that guy, and this customer implementation should of course implements the customer interface. And now we need to override the getter and setter methods. To do that, just the getters, because we haven't defined the setters on the customer. You are welcome to do that, but for now we are only focusing on the getter methods. Select them because we are loading the details. That is where the proxy is effective. Select them, source, generate getters and setters, select all after orders, hit OK. Do a Control Shift F to format. All the errors are gone. So here I have implemented all the key classes here. The customer order, customer impl. So right in the constructor of customer impl, I'm going to initialize the ID value. Typically we'll load all the information like customer name, first name, last name, email, etc. from a database. We are skipping that database call. We are simply going to initialize this dot ID is equal to 123. Let's also create a test class. Right click, create new class, call it test, select the main method, finish, double click to maximize, Control D, new customer impl, assign that to a customer, the interface is equal to that, do a sysout of customer dot get ID, sysout customer dot get orders. Let's see the output. Right click, do a run as Java application, And on the console, if I minimize that, I should see a 1, 2, 3 and a null. The orders are not being loaded. In the next lecture, we'll create a proxy for this customer and we'll see both the ID as well as the orders loaded.